up, degenerates? This is Locked In. As per usual, I'm your host, Mason Cameron, at PFF_Mace on Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta, at Vishaal_Gupta 95 on Twitter. V, we're back. It is the last show of the regular season. There's all sorts of antics going around this week. We had to comb through a lot of information, but we've got it. We've got the winners this week. I've got a good feeling. Are you ready to make some cash this week?
Yeah, definitely ready. It should be an interesting week. We're going to be betting on probably quite more backups than we would like to, but that's just the way it goes for the final week of the regular season, but we'll make it work.
If you're anything like me, where you were Googling a number of quarterbacks this week, like who is the backup for Justin Fields? Like, I've discovered so many people are still in the league. Like, shout out Mike Glennon getting another job out there, I guess. Yeah. So, it's another good week. There's always a good week to make money, and we are going to be heading into playoffs. So you're not going to want to miss it. This is the first of the shows that's going to jump into playoffs. Next week, we are actually going to do the entire playoff preview show. And my dog just walked down here because I forgot to shut the door. But hi, Shadow. But anyway, so last night we did over underdogs, business as usual. That was the last over underdogs of the season. If you missed it, go check it out for yourself. You can find it on our YouTube and on our Twitch pages, and also all those picks over in our Discord. And tonight we are doing the main event. But first, without further ado, V, we have some things to get out of the way. So for anybody, any of our keen observers, any of our keen viewers, they know that we didn't drop NFL Versus this week. And that's because this was a special edition of NFL Versus. It's our last NFL Versus of the year. Anybody who doesn't know, that's our piece. We go head to head every single week with picks on the book just to see who comes out on top, because, you never know. Sometimes you see two smart guys, they get in the same room together, and, you don't always agree. You got to make your own decisions. So that's what we're for right here. And V, you're leading me, but you gave me a shot this week. I do have to show my appreciation, because V actually has a 2-pick lead heading into this week. He is 17-15 after we split last week. So this week we have a special 3-pick NFL Versus. It's like none other. And you are going to get one of those picks here tonight. And to get the other two, you have to go onto the website, importantnonsense.com, and get in there to check it out. That piece just went live as this show went live, so you can get all of that over at the website. You're going to love it. V, we have a good couple in store there, and tonight we're breaking down another one. And this actually is the game that I think I'm most excited about this week. I mean, like, how could you not be excited for... Let me get this up here. I forgot my graphic here. You guys almost saw my background again. But who could not be excited for the Titans at the Jags? Winner takes the AFC South crown. Now, somebody's got to win the AFC South. Somebody has to win the NFC South for that matter, too. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to take home both of these last division crowns. But when we see this game, we have the Jags are -6 at home against the Titans. And I'm taking the Jags. You're on the side of the Titans. And shout out our guy, Ben Hunt, who knew the entire time. He'd been trying to tell everybody that the Jags were the real deal. And even I sold on the Jags at one point in the season and picked them back up. I'm a discerning buyer. But Ben never wavered, never faltered for his guys. And look where they are. They control their own destiny. This team's just electric on offense, V. I love to watch them play. Trevor Lawrence is playing out of his mind. They're super efficient. They're 6th in EPA per dropback this season. That's tied with the Eagles. Like, think about that. This team is just as efficient passing the ball as the Eagles are. Now, I know the Eagles do a whole lot of things better, and that's kind of why they're so good. But man, it has been great to watch them. They're also ranking 4th in points per game over their last 3. That's the big selling point for me in this matchup is I just have a really hard time seeing how Tennessee is going to keep up with this Jacksonville offense. Man, I know that like the Jacksonville defense hasn't been great, so hopefully Tennessee can get something rolling. But I mean, as of late, they've been a little bit better. They're 6th in the NFL in points per game, only allowing 13.3 in their last 3 games. They railroaded Houston this past week. And if anybody remembers, that's the same Houston team that upset Tennessee at home just a couple of weeks ago. We highlighted it last night in Over Underdogs that this is a really bad spot for Tennessee as they're going to be starting Josh Dobbs, but they are going to be playing Derrick Henry, who is the ultimate X factor. He will be the one to watch. But these aren't exactly new issues for them. They have had Henry for a lot of their games this season, but they haven't managed to win or cover a game since the middle of November. They're 0-5-1 against the spread, while the Jags on the opposite end are 5-1 in that same period. Man, I just can't wait to say go Jags. I got a Jags hat around here somewhere. I should have whipped out. But anyway, V, what are you seeing when you see this matchup that has you liking Tennessee?
Well, if you're anything like me, you definitely thought this game was on last night and not on Saturday because this game just screams Thursday night football. But I guess Saturday is essentially the same thing. Yeah, there's definitely no doubt Jacksonville is the more talented team. It's very obvious. It's not even that close. Even if Ryan Tannehill is playing in this one, there would still be a pretty wide talent disparity between these two teams, and that's why I was really down on Tennessee heading into the season and why I thought they could be a dark horse to be the worst team in the league. This is just a very untalented team overall, I think, compared to other teams in the league. And yet they started the season at 7-3. And a lot of that, I think you have to give credit to Mike Vrabel. He just continues to coach these guys extremely hard. They love playing for him. They go 120% on the field every time. So even though there is a talent disparity, their level of effort helps close the gap. And some things we've seen recently for that could be a cause for the losing streak is just all the injuries they've had. I think they're in contention to be the most injured team this year, just looking at all the guys they've lost on IR or who have missed a game here or there. This team has been extremely banged up, and one thing they have going for them this week is that they're getting some guys back, some key guys, including Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Fulton, Danico Autry. All these guys are coming back, and Derrick Henry is going to be 100% in this game. And if he can get going, this game is going to be close. This is a divisional game, a win or go home game for both teams. And whenever we get in a situation like this, these games are usually always close. I mean, you just go back to last year, that Chargers-Raiders game on Sunday night went to overtime, almost ended in a tie, which would have sent both teams into the playoffs, but the Raiders pulled that one out. This should be a 3-point game, I think, in this one as well, either way, even though there is a big talent gap. I think Tennessee just plays extremely hard. They know what the situation is, and I think Derrick Henry gets going in this one to keep this game close.
If only they could have tied that game.
If only. Nobody wanted to see Pittsburgh in the playoffs last year.
I think we all were cheering for the tie at that point. So
yes,
and I'm right there with you. These guys play hard for Vrabel. He is one of the best coaches. I think he should probably be in conversation for coach of the year pretty much every year, but the roster and the record doesn't exactly equate to being in the conversation all the time, but he's going to be a guy that's around for many years to come. Even if
they just need a general manager. They just
need a better roster. Yeah, better roster to get underneath him because they are pretty dang good. And for anybody that wants to follow along with how this thing closes out, that is the Saturday game, but we have 2 more that are in the Sunday window, and you can check those out, like I said, over on importantnonsense.com to check out our piece, NFL Versus, to see who we're taking and why. And then you can head over to our Discord where we will surely be live messaging the antics back and forth for both of these games, which are going to be a doozy, I do think. And I can't wait to do it, V. It's going to be a great way to close it out.
Yeah, it's going to be great. You got to go 3-0 to get the win. I don't think you can do it, but let's see how it goes.
I have the equivalent of all these people in their fantasy leagues that are like, yeah, but I just needed 90 points from Burrow, and I definitely would have won the championship. I'm kind of in that realm right now, but so we're hanging on. We're holding on by a prayer. But I definitely can't wait to do it. It's going to be a fun ride. And first and foremost, we are heading into our games for the week. And for anybody that does not know, we don't usually hit all of the games. Now, this week, frankly, we do have a bunch of the games. We have most of them because we kind of like touched on all of them. And there's kind of some news for a bunch of them. But if there's any games in here that you're super interested in that we don't touch on, head into our Discord, go right into the sports betting tab, and you can ping me and V, and we'll definitely handicap the game right there on the spot for you. Tell you what we're thinking and what we're picking. And yeah, it's just a great way to have fun with us and go over some bets and go over some picks. So definitely want to get in there and check it out. The first game on our slate here, we have Houston at Indy. And V, you are liking Houston plus 2.5, while we're both on the under at 38.5. So V, what are you seeing when you see this game? And actually, you're gonna have to entertain the people for a second, V, while I take my dog back upstairs because her little paws are pitter-pattering so much. I will be right back.
All right, yeah. Just like Mason said, I like Houston plus 2.5, and I'm also on the under 38. This is going to be Davis Mills versus Sam Ehlinger. This is going to be a brutal game to watch, but there's a lot of implications on the line in terms of the draft order in this one. If Houston loses, they lock up the 1 seed. If they win and Chicago loses, then Chicago gets the 1 seed. So it feels like Houston has a bunch of reasons to kind of throw in the towel on this one. But that's just not who this team is. That's not who Lovie Smith is as a coach. They're going to play the full 60 minutes, and they're going to play to win. And it's just, I don't know how you can bet on Sam Ehlinger as a favorite. That just seems ridiculous to me. There's no way he should be getting any sort of points in his favor. It might be a little unfair to just completely write his career off already just based on 2 starts. But, man, he did not look good, and this franchise as a whole just has had a terrible year. I think if there's any team whose stock fell more than anybody else's this year, it was the Indianapolis Colts. They were supposed to be the division winners. They were supposed to make a playoff push, and now they're going to be a bottom 5 team, and they don't really have a good path forward to change things. I think the quarterback matchup favors the Texans. I think the coaching matchup favors the Texans. I just don't see how the Colts are going to pull this one out. I think this is going to be a Houston win, and this should be a relatively easy under. Crazy stat, both teams have scored less than 20 points in 8 of their last 10 games. This is a terrible, terrible matchup in terms of offenses. Both teams rank in the bottom 3 in points scored, and they both rank in the bottom 5 in yards gained. This is another situation where mathematically I don't see how they get to 38.5 points. Slam the under.
You know, I should have taken Houston too, so I could shake the Jeff Saturday being my guy allegations that.
Yeah, right. Where are you
with
that, man?
What the heck, man? So no, I'm right there with you though. And the line for this one has actually even moved towards where we're at 38. It's just further proof of why you guys got to get in and shop early. I mean, we hammer it every single week. That's why you got to get into our Discord too, because we throw in picks all week long where you're not going to be able to get a hang of some of them, you know, super early on. Now, this one's only a half point, but they get a little bit further as we go down the list. And to me, like, this is just a classic Cancun game. 2 teams that are pretty much checked out. They were eliminated a long time ago. And even anyway, they would have trouble hitting this over regardless, even if motivation was there. Indy and Houston, they rank 30 and 31st respectively in points per game this season. Neither has looked very good defensively either, but that shouldn't really matter because as we've talked about, it's more about executing on offense than it is about, you know, how putrid a certain defense is. Like if your offense is bad to a degree, it's not going to matter who you're playing. And that's kind of this situation here. Just to put all this into perspective, another fun fact, just to put, the great stat that you just gave us. In each of these teams' last 2 games, they've both put up a game with just 3 points, and they've combined in 4 total games for 30 total points.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, right? I mean, they were going to hit this over if they played each other 3 times, probably. So I don't see where they're going to get points from. Hey, it's a good season, I guess. I mean, I guess you guys can, pick up the pieces and go back. I get Indy is going to have to be, knocking on the door of a quarterback, and who's going to answer it come draft time is going to be.
Yeah, there's talks about CJ Stroud going back to Ohio State. If he goes back, they're in a world of.
And I think that some of these guys' agents are going, hey guys, this might be the year that we start going back and not doing this eligibility thing, because you look at it, would you rather be drafted by some of these wretched teams at the bottom of the barrel, or would you rather go back to Ohio State and make your NIL deal?
Right.
Seems like a no-brainer to me. But anyway, I digress. And we move on to greener pastures and better games. In this one here, we have the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are -7, and you're liking that and the under at 43.5. What are you seeing when you see this matchup? I'm sure you're surprised to not see me on the side of the Patriots, as I tended to do it just to get under your skin the last few weeks. But no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, this is a line that is super intriguing because, as we always talk about, that key number of 7, they're right on it here. So what makes you confident about the Bills covering more than the touchdown this week?
I just think the Bills are a significantly better team. I think this entire New England season has been terrible. The fact that they're in playoff contention is just a giant fluke. It really covers up a lot of the issues that this team has. The Bills rank in the top 5 in points scored and yards gained on offense, and they also rank in the top 5 in fewest points allowed and yards allowed to opposing offenses. New England ranks in the bottom half of the league in scoring and yards gained. They do have a solid defense. They rank in the top 10 defensively, but offensively, there's just a huge gap between Buffalo and New England. The last time these 2 teams played, Buffalo went into New England and won 24-10. And honestly, the game wasn't even as close as that score indicates. Buffalo pretty much dominated. And the crazy thing for New England is they've scored a defensive touchdown in 4 straight games. It's a pretty wild stat, but that is the main reason they've won some of these games, just because they're getting fluky defensive touchdowns that you can't bet on week to week. You can't count on your defense or your special teams to score points for you in order to win games, and that's what New England is doing right now. And I just don't think that's going to happen, especially because one of their key guys, Jack Jones, is out. He is their electric punt returner who also plays some on defense, who had a pick 6 against Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago. He's out. I think this is going to be a blowout. I think New England is in a bad spot. They need to make a ton of changes offensively going into next season. And then this should be also an easy under. Like I said, both teams rank in the top 10 in points allowed and yards allowed. And without those 4 defensive scores I mentioned, New England would not have surpassed 20 points in each of their last 4 games. They had to get that defensive score to surpass 20 points. If they're not going to get it, they're not going to score 20 points. They probably won't even score 17 points. Should be a nice, easy win for Buffalo and a nice, easy under.
Yeah, and and hopefully, hey, as much as New England's a team too, the guys in Buffalo deserve it, especially after last week. And again, shout out to Damar Hamlin. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. That's a scary situation for everybody involved, and it's kind of hard to think that they have to, go out and play a game that matters. The next week, it's a really tough situation. He's making a good recovery too, if anybody hasn't seen. So we're really excited about that and really rooting for him. And as far as this game is concerned, I think you're hitting it right on the head. Like, as much as I've kind of tailed New England, at least recently, it was because a lot of them they were getting some points at home and things like that, and just certain situations and matchups. But this is not those situations. This is not those matchups. The Buffalo Bills are the real deal. They're playing for, or they were playing for the top seed in the AFC. If they continue down this road and they win this game and go on and push down to the AFC Championship, we're talking about potential neutral site AFC Championship games, which is a high likelihood at this point, frankly. So it's going to be an interesting draw moving forward. They have their eyes set forward, so hopefully the mental part of the game doesn't get in the way of them. And my only concern would be how long they play their starters, if that's going to be something that moves into this being, you know, a 7-point spread and not maybe like 8 to, 9 to 10, like it really could be if we were fully confident.
I think what you talked about, though, was for those scenarios for the AFC Championship game. If Kansas City wins, like we're all expecting them to do, the Buffalo's going to want to win to ensure that AFC Championship game is played on a neutral field rather than Kansas City. So you would assume that they're going to play their guys most of the way. At least that's my expectation.
Right. And there's a number of situations that I don't even have all the scenarios. But if you have any questions, if anybody's watching, you have any questions, you can go into our Discord. Our fearless leader, Steve Bonham, just posted a chart in there, I think this morning, about all the scenarios and who you should be voting for so that there is not pandemonium come playoff time and what scenarios equal a neutral site game. It was a great, interesting read. I love a good chart. I'm a sucker for a good chart. So it all starts with just winning the games. All right. Buffalo, just take care of business. You ain't got to worry about it. But on to another game, which is so interesting because we were talking about how New England just does not deserve to be in playoff contention. And frankly, as weird as it is to say, neither do the Dolphins. And they're right there too. And it's partially just because this team has fallen off a cliff since their amazing start to the season where they were playing great. We spat out the line that with Tua under center, they were amazing against the spread and they were winning all these games and they were putting up all these points. But that is just not how it is right now. So what I'm sitting here on, though, is I'm on the under at 38.5 because this game does not look like a matchup of two teams where the Jets were just eliminated from playoff contention and the Dolphins are staring down the barrel of it this week. Miami is playing for their playoff lives. They got to do it again this week without Tua. And not to mention, Teddy broke a finger last week and he's not going to be starting for them. So they are rolling with Skylar Thompson under center, and they signed Mike Glennon to back him up. The aforementioned Mike Glennon, shout out to you, man. I think it's just further proof that you could play very middling football, middling to low-level football at the quarterback position and still continue to work. I love a good hustle, so shout out to those guys for sure. But on the other hand, when we talk about Skylar Thompson, forget Mike Glennon for a second. Shout out Mike Glennon. But when we look at Skylar Thompson, in games where Skylar Thompson started for this team, they scored 16.5 points per game. That's not going to get it done.
Nope.
Even against a Jets team that isn't going to put up very much on their own, when we're looking at 38.5 points, and this line is one that I was kind of alluding to earlier. This line has this total has plummeted down to 37. And it's probably going to get even lower as we get closer to game time. I wouldn't be surprised if it's at 36.5 or even 36. When you look at what the Jets are doing too, it's just, where are points supposed to be coming from now?
Yeah, go ahead. You know who's starting for quarterback for the Jets this week?
I had to go. I didn't even look. Who?
It's Joe Flacco.
Oh, they're starting Joe? Okay.
They're starting Joe. This line is going to go down further.
Okay. It's probably going to go down even further. See, I was under the impression that they were going to roll with Mike White again. But as we saw last week, I don't know that he's fully healed.
That's what they said. His rib injury acted up again. He's not healthy. That's why they're not playing.
Yeah. So it's just it's something that we talked about actually in NFL Versus last week. We're all big fans of Mike White. Shout out Mike White, put him in the Hall of Fame already. But like his ribs were turned to sawdust. Like this man had popsicle sticks just shatter in his chest, and he took a couple of weeks off. I know that the NFL's got a really strong pharmacy, as we call it, but that's just not enough. They only scored what was it that they even scored last week? 3?
6.
Oh, they scored 6 for a grand total of 9 in their last 2 games, and now they're going to Joe Flacco. Now I know Flacco played like decently, like okay, whatever, but they weren't winning any games. They're not putting up any points. They're averaging just 12 points per game since the start of December. I think that it goes deeper than just quarterback, where I don't know that the team is buying into the offensive philosophy. They definitely weren't buying into who was under center when it was Zach Wilson. Now they obviously let Mike White, but there's those issues. I don't know where this team goes from here. They at least have a really good defense, but something has to give when this team is moving forward into the year. And it's safe to say that the Jets are now on a jet to the Turks and Caicos. They're on vacation mode. I don't see many points getting scored in this game. The Dolphins probably win it by 13-6. Like, let's just call it a final score of that. And frankly, it's not going to matter because it's in the early window and you don't even have to watch it. But we go on to another game you're also probably not going to watch, but you're going to win a bunch of money off of it because it doesn't quite make any sense. V, we are looking at Carolina at New Orleans, and V, you're liking Carolina plus 3.5. I'm right there with you. What are you seeing? Why would they give this line like this? That's a little disrespectful to Carolina, in my opinion, in my estimation. What are you seeing when you see this one?
Well, I'm seeing that nice juicy hook. That was the first thing that jumped out at me with the 3.5. I just had to jump on it. Yeah, both teams are eliminated, but that means you can probably expect them to play all their starters because they don't have to rest for anything. So this is going to be Sam Darnold versus Andy Dalton. And I just think this 3.5 is way too many points. New Orleans has scored 21 or fewer points in each of their last 5 games. If they're struggling to get to 21 points, how are they going to cover a 3.5 point spread? Whereas Carolina, on the other hand, has scored 23 plus points in 4 out of the last 5 games, all with Sam Darnold under center. I think this is going to be a relatively low scoring game. I think both teams will struggle to get to 20. And if they're not scoring points, it's not going to be a big cover. I actually think Carolina can win this game outright. I think they're more talented. I've liked what I've seen from Sam Darnold. He had an awesome first half last week. It took like a miracle Tom Brady, Mike Evans game last week for them to come back. But in the first half, Sam Darnold was clicking. He made incredible throws to DJ Moore. And if they're going to keep it up even just a little bit, it's going to be tough for New Orleans to cover and even win this game. So I definitely like Carolina to cover the 3 and the hook.
Tom Brady, how does he continue to do it? They look dead on arrival the whole game. Like they didn't even show up.
They're going to win a playoff game. You know it's going to happen.
They better not be. If they win a playoff game. We'll get into more of this next week when it's set. If they win a playoff game because they get home field and they have to play, well, who? Like, okay, let's think about it.
They're going to play Dallas most likely.
They're going to play Dallas. Come on, all right, we'll get into it more next week for sure, but they better not
want Mike McCarthy to be fired.
Oh, goodness. And you know what? Speaking of Carolina, we were kind of laughing at their run game for a little bit, but man, it's starting to pop off. They're getting multiple backs going over 100 yards every single week. They look like one of the strongest running teams in the league. It's crazy that finding your identity can really lead to good things. And that's where and they're hitting their stride right now. And unfortunately they're eliminated, but you could take somebody down with you at the end. Might as well.
For sure.
On to our next game here. We're talking Minnesota at Chicago. I'm liking under 43.5. And it's actually moved down to 42.5. But this is one that I actually was on the other side of initially because I was thinking, man, Justin Fields, he has the ability to pop. This Vikings offense, They have a lot of playmakers. This is something that we talked about during over underdogs this last week. Last night when we took 2 Vikings players to absolutely decimate this horrendous Bears defense. But I don't know that you can think about the over anymore because the news of Justin Fields is now going to be out for this game. And as we talked about earlier, Nathan Peterman is going to get the start. And all jokes about his interceptions aside, he is just, I'm not sure. I don't want to be too hard on the guy because guys work really hard to get into the NFL, but I'm really not sure how he continues to have a roster spot with how bad he's played. He's never really had any bright moments, and now he's going to start for this Bears team that hasn't had a lot of bright moments this season, except outside of anything Justin Fields has done anyway. I don't really understand it. Now, Minnesota will have to get 41 for this over to be in play. Could they? Sure. Yeah. Is it likely? Maybe. Should you bet the under? Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes, you should bet the under because they'll probably win like 33-6. And you're going to be like, we should have saw that coming. This is going to be one of those games where the Vikings, they don't exactly have a ton of play for except for maybe some jostling in the seating, kind of holding on to that 2 or 3 or wherever they're at right now. So they have a little something to play for. Maybe they take their foot off the pedal at some point, which also helps incorporate this under. But the Bears are eliminated. They don't have a lot going for them even when they're healthy. I don't see where they're going to be getting points from, even against a Vikings defense that we followed around pretty much all season and took advantage of. This is another team out of the NFCV that I'm going to be lost when they play a game. If the Vikings had to have matched up with the Bucks, it would have been just the worst outcome, no matter who won. So I don't know. I don't see it going up much higher than like 36, 37 points. Are you seeing anything different from this matchup? You're actually the one, we highlighted this one for NFL versus almost. But then as the week kind of went on, the news about Justin Fields came out and you alerted me to this one. Are you seeing anything else or are you on that side too?
No, I was on the under when we were talking about this earlier in the week, even with Fields possibly starting. I got this at under 45 or maybe 45 and a half. I thought even with Fields playing, there was going to be a difficult time for this number to hit just because of how much the Bears offense has struggled recently. They scored 10 last week, I think 13 the week before. This offense is not playing well right now, even with Fields out there. So when you bring in Nathan Peterman, I was shocked this total only dropped a couple points. This should be well below 40. And then you throw in the news from earlier today. Kevin O'Connell was talking to the media, and it sounds like there's a good chance they could bring in the backup sometime in this game in Minnesota as well. There's really no chance this game is going to hit this 42.5 number. I would slam the under. If this is still above 40 when the game starts, I would be surprised. There's just no chance. Nathan Peterman starting for the Bears. Kirk Cousins and the starters from Minnesota only playing maybe 2-3 quarters in this one. Easy under. Got to take it.
And the funny thing is even in 2 to 3 quarters, I think that I'm still confident in those picks of the NFL versus. Or
I would still be confident in Justin Jefferson getting 2 or 3 quarters.
Exactly. With both of our Vikings getting those overs in just a few quarters because, yeah, both defenses are not great, but it takes 2 to tango. The Bears aren't going to be able to do it. This is a nice underplay and an over for Vikings skill players. I like it right there. Yep. And we move on to another game with not any playoff implications, but some interesting off-season
implications. Pittsburgh can make the playoffs, so there is some playoff
Are they implications. Not? Okay.
No.
Okay, I thought they were eliminated.
Miami lose and Pittsburgh wins, Pittsburgh is in the playoffs.
Oh, got it. So they need a little bit of help. Okay, so scratch that, reverse it. We have a little bit of room for Pittsburgh to be playing here, and that's actually good. I like that. But we are on the side here. V, you are liking the under at 40.5. What are you seeing when you see this matchup in particular. I know a lot of people have their eyes on the news that Jadeveon Clowney is upset. I mean, I guess, life is tough when you live in Cleveland sometimes, I guess. So they actually are not going to be playing him in this one either. Are you seeing anything in this game that sticks out to you that, why would they score a bunch of points? I don't see anything. So what are you seeing with this one?
Yeah, this is another under. To be honest, I think I'm taking the under in like 14 out of the 16 games this week. It's not gonna be great.
Me too.
But you just have to with how bad some of these offenses are. Pittsburgh has scored less than 20 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Cleveland is averaging less than 17 points per game in the 5 games since Deshaun Watson has returned. He is averaging 174 passing yards per game, and Watson is only completing 57% of his passes. He is not playing well right now. They're not putting up points. Most of their a couple of their scores have come from defense or special teams. So if you take that out and you look at just what the offense has done, it's even less than the 17 points that I mentioned earlier. Not a good offense for them. Kenny Pickett has done some really clutch things the last couple of weeks, but their total output is still extremely low. They had 13 against the Raiders a couple of weeks ago. They had something last week that was like 15, 16 points. Good for him for being clutch in these games and keeping them in the playoff hunt, but that doesn't mean you can take the over in this game at all. Again, another situation where mathematically I don't see how you can get to 40 and a half if neither team can score 20 points. So you just, again, I hate to keep hitting this over and over again, but you just have to take the unders in these games.
Yeah, and when you put it in the grand scheme of things, like you just said, we're heavily on the unders this week, and that's very typical with this time of year as the weather starts to cool down and be very cold in a lot of these areas. And then when you just look at the fact that, like with Cleveland and Pittsburgh, this total is 40 and a half. Every other game we talked about so far this week, 37 points, 38 points. Everything is much lower than 40. And there's I think that these two teams are right there in that same discussion as mediocrity on offense. Offense is hard to do. I get that sometimes it seems like when a team scores 30 on a bad defense, it seems like everybody's going to score 30 on a bad defense or something like that. But that's just not the case. And then when you look at like Pittsburgh and Cleveland, Pittsburgh actually has a good defense. And if Cleveland's not playing well on offense, where are they going to get any points? And frankly, you hit the nail on the head that as much as we like Kenny Pickett, and you've turned me into a Kenny Pickett believer, I love small hand Pickett. He is a gamer to the highest degree. But you can tell when an offensive staff is scared to death to let their young passer really let it loose. In Pittsburgh,
until they absolutely have to, which is what we're seeing these last couple of games, where it's not happening until the end of the fourth quarter.
Until the end of the fourth quarter, where they're like, hey, Kenny, go win it for us. And he's like, thanks, guys. I wish you would have just kind of like let me do a little bit in the first half, like give us a lead at least. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that the under is well in play, and I think that this one is going to drop at least another point or a half by the time we get into the game time. And here, so this one, full disclosure, everybody, we're looking at the Chargers at the Broncos. I'm on the side of the Chargers +3. Now, full disclosure, I was on the side of the Chargers -3. But this one has moved substantially due to the Bengals-Bills game officially being called a no contest, as well as other playoff situations playing into this. So let me just read this off so I don't mess it up. If Cincinnati beats Baltimore in the early window, the Chargers are locked at the 5 seed and possibly going to be sitting their starters. Now, with that being said, Baltimore has a high probability of losing that game. And so this line could be a moot point. It will be something worth watching as the game is going. and let it be known that, yes, this is a race against you in your book. You are going to need to watch the Baltimore game like a hawk. If anything is in line that Baltimore might squeeze something out, which granted we won't because of tiebreaker scenarios, kind of like we talked about, an AFC conference game, championship, neutral site field shenanigans, the Bengals want to win and they're going to play pretty dang hard. But if something were to happen and Baltimore is to take this game, you're going to want to hit this line ASAP before it gets a chance to swing right back in the other direction as where it was when the Chargers were going to start. I'm going to be monitoring it heavy because I think that this is a huge money-making opportunity, even if it were to swing to -3, because this Chargers team is finally just getting hot. They're finally better. They're finally getting less injured. Joey Bosa's now back. Their defense is playing well. Their offense is playing well. Frankly, if it's me and I'm the coach of the team, I'm probably trying to get my starters out there regardless of the outcome of the Baltimore game for at least a half. And the reason being is because my quarterback and my receivers and my defense as a whole have only had so many games together this season, because whether it be Mike Williams or Keenan Allen or Joey Bosa or anybody along the line, somebody's been hurt at a time or two or pretty much all season. So I'd like to see how my team plays at full strength for at least a half. Now, even with backups in the game, I think 3 is a very reasonable number because, as we've talked about a number of times this year, Denver just hasn't been that good offensively. Now they've been better offensively in recent weeks, and they've been better against divisional opponents. That's definitely true, but I still can't count out a Chargers team who their backups have been their starters for a lot of the season. So they have a ton of experience. They've played this Denver team before. And frankly, I hate to jam up the Broncos, but they've had a really long and rough season. The defense is starting to falter. The offense might have picked it up a little bit, but they still rank in the bottom of the league in offensive points scored and yards and pretty much everything offensive statistic wise. I hate to say it about my guys, but I think a lot of the Broncos, they have their umbrella drinks ready. They're ready for the offseason and to come and pick this thing back up next season with what is presumably going to be more high expectations for them. I think the Chargers are poised right now, and that's a scary thing to see. Are you seeing anything else differently with this matchup at all? I know that it seems like I'm beating up on my guys, V, but what do you think about this one?
Well, I'll start by saying I think from a competitive standpoint, the NFL really bungled the scheduling for this week. I mean, let's just be honest, the way they scheduled everything. I understand the Lions versus Packers might be a bigger draw and might bring in more viewers, but the fact that the Lions might not have anything to play for if Seattle wins earlier in the day is it's not fair to them. The fact that you put this Chargers game after Cincinnati and Baltimore and allow the Chargers to not have anything to play for doesn't make sense. There's other scenarios. I mean, the Cowboys, Eagles, and Niners can all get the 1 seed in the NFC, but they're not all playing at the same time. It's just a mess. I don't know why they did it like this. They've been pretty consistently good at doing it where they put teams at the same window when they have something, when they're going up against each other for seeding or getting into the playoffs. They've done really well with that in the past, but they just have done a terrible job this year. So I don't know. I'm going to stay away from this one because, again, I don't know what the situation is going to be in terms of the Chargers playing their guys or not. It's just a shame what they did for the scheduling this week.
Exactly. And, I guess like they tried to do their best in some ways because
there was plenty of things they could have done. Just put the Jaguars Titans on Sunday night. We all know it's a win or go home, regardless of what happens the rest of the week.
Right.
Just put it there. I mean, I don't know why it was so complicated.
Make Detroit Green Bay Saturday night. Make the Baltimore this game in the same window, in the morning window, and then Like the only real game that they did it for the only games that they did it for were the Dallas and Philly games.
But there's
Because
a chance where if both of those teams win, San Francisco would have set all of their starters because they no longer have anything to play for because they have a chance to get the 1 seed if
right.
Philly loses. So I mean, even then, there's like weird stuff going on. I just don't know what they were doing.
You know, and it's tough. Like that is really tough. And I think a part of it comes down to when you make every single game in the week 18 slot a divisional game. Like I know that they're like I get why they instituted that a few years ago, because a lot like, but I think we've just proven over this year, and the same thing happened last year too, where these games, most of them didn't mean anything. Now, frankly, a lot of the games this year have kind of been in these situations where they don't really mean a whole lot. Hasn't been a ton of excellent games right off the rip, but these scheduling issues are things that they should definitely foresee, especially when they just flexed the Detroit game. They just flexed it. Like, you could have just who was there to say like, guys, maybe we should flex this other game because this is going to be better. Put this one right here, just like we were just saying, because so many things this week do rely on a little bit of help in tiebreaker scenarios, and it makes for a tough draw for these guys who have to figure it out on the fly for sure.
Agreed.
But anyway, on to our next one. We are looking at Dallas at Washington. I'm on the side. I got this one really early. I'm on the side at 5.5. It's moved down to -7. I'll still take it at 7 because, as we've talked about before with these key numbers, when the line's 5.5, it might as well be 7. So go ahead and go for it. And this is actually one we wrote up for NFL Versus. So I don't want to get too deep into it. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It just went live right before the show, like I said. And this game is going to be a blowout. We both agreed on it in our write-up here. It just depends on by how much. I got it at 5.5. I still like it at 7. The only thing for me to be weary about is Dallas, how long they're going to play their starters. So just like we've kind of been talking about, you still run into an issue with scoreboard watching where you know that this Dallas staff is going to have one guy. There's going to be one poor, water boy or like personal trainer assistant that his only job on Sunday is going to be watching the scoreboard of the Eagles game and letting the staff know what the score is. Because if the Eagles, take off with this one, the Cowboys have nothing left to play for at that point. They want to win, but that's only if Philly loses so that they can potentially miraculously find their way into the 1 seed, maybe.
Yeah,
and
possibility.
If they don't if the Eagles are running away with it and they're up 21 or whatever, I would fully expect Dallas to start teetering back, pulling some of their starters. And at that point, it's a little iffy on if they're going to fully cover the 7. But I think that they still have a really great opportunity to do that because they're just so massively talented offensively. They've really been hitting the ground running right now. They have some issues on defense.
Sam Howell's not going to take advantage, is he?
Yeah, no. Like, they have to start Sam Howell. Now, we continue to hit this, note every week that, I get it. We, these guys that haven't made starts, they might have potential. But if you're going to sit there and bet your money on these guys to break out in their first ever start on teams that aren't really that great as is, you're fooling yourself. You're just fooling yourself. And that's kind of where Washington sits right now with Sam Howell. Now, I like Sam Howell coming out. I think that he, was a little bit, maligned, unfairly maligned in his first, in the pre-draft process. I thought he has a lot more going for him, but the Washington Commanders' issues go much deeper than just quarterback. They are struggling in a lot of phases of the game. One of them, maybe, I hate to say this, one of them might be coaching, because something has gone wrong where you're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between quarterbacks, where it's you go out and get Carson Wentz, and then he's not doing the job. So you go to Taylor Heineke as the guy the locker room wanted, not the guy the front office wanted, the guy the locker room wanted. And then you move away from him back to the guy the front office wanted. And now you're to the guy that I don't even know if they wanted. So something's got to give here. Dallas is way too talented. As long as Dallas is playing a majority of their starters for most of the game, I don't see how this one ends any more or any less than 7 points. I'm really in on this one. What else are you seeing for this game, D?
I'm in total agreement. The good thing for Dallas is even if they end up pulling their starters, Cooper Rush has had experience this year. He started a few games this year, and he played quite well. They won all those games, or most of those games. So even if he comes in, I think there's a good chance Dallas can continue putting up points. I think they can cover this number in the first half pretty easily. I don't think, even if Philly is kind of running away with it, we're not going to see Dallas take their starters out until at least halftime, probably at the earliest. In even one half, I think Dallas can kind of get a blowout, be in a blowout situation. So I'm not overly concerned. But in the other hand, I agree. What Rivera did last week, putting in Carson Wentz, was an abject disaster. Losing at home against a terrible Cleveland team is unacceptable. He might not be there next year. I'm talking about Ron Rivera. Just not a good situation overall. Definitely got to take the Cowboys in the 7.
Yeah. Man, hopefully a change in ownership helps that team out, because something's got to give. I was talking to some friends, and somebody pulled up a picture from Wikipedia of Dan Schneider, and it was like a GQ picture, and I'm like, why is Wikipedia putting up GQ quality thirst traps of Dan Schneider when this team is this bad? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But anyway, that is the world we live in. And we actually head into our last game of the slate. We are looking at the aforementioned Lions at the Packers. I'm on the side of Detroit +5. It's moved to 4.5. A lot of the money here is definitely on Detroit. But with that being said, as we just established, it could mean nothing. So this is another one that we have to watch as we move into game time. We talked about this, though. This game in general, all playoff scenarios aside, the 5 is just too many points to be awarding to Detroit. I know that last night on Over Underdogs, we talked about Aaron Jones and his ability to make life tough on this Lions defense, but they have to keep up with the Lions for that to happen too. I think that this game is going to end up a lot closer than it should be. 5 is just a weird number, and it would mean that Green Bay has to cover by a touchdown. That's something that we go over all the time. The Lions are just too potent offensively to do that, though. I know that sometimes they don't show up on the road, but I don't see this being one of those times, because if they have something to play for, they're going to come out and play pretty hard, I think, especially with how they're coached. So for me, Detroit is a huge play here as momentum, but they might not win this one. I think that the points are the good way to take it, and Green Bay probably ekes out like a 3-point win off like a last-second field goal. And it's going to be an insane game if it means anything. And again, that sucks, because we could be looking at the last Sunday night football game of the season not meaning anything, which is kind of a shame. But are you seeing anything else with this matchup in prime time here? The Packers are surging at the right time. Do they have it in them to potentially cover this at all, or what are you seeing with this one?
They could. Personally, I'm definitely rooting for Seattle and Detroit to win this weekend because then both the Lions and Packers are eliminated. That would be pretty fun to get a double knockout in one day. But Green Bay could cover this one. I think the key for them is their defense is the key group that is surging right now. They've played quite well. They had 3 picks against Tua a couple of weeks ago on Christmas. Then they come back last weekend. They completely shut down Kirk Cousins. Offensively, though, it's still not great. This offense for Green Bay did not have a good start to the game last week, but they got bailed out because they had a kick return for a touchdown, and then they had a defensive pick six to put them up 14-3. And then at that point, Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson just could not get anything going. They just got shut out. And then the Packers kind of put in like 40 minutes worth of garbage time, and that's why they got up to 40 points. But if this is going to be a close game, I still don't trust this Green Bay offense at all. They have not shown any type of consistency. Rodgers is still missing throws. He's getting tons of pressure. And I think, Aiden Hutchinson has been a beast this year, but there's been a couple of other guys on that Detroit defense who are playing quite well, especially up front. So if they can get pressure on Rodgers, I think this is going to be a close one, like you said. And I think Detroit can eke this one out. The key matchup is Detroit's offense versus Green Bay's defense. Both units are hotter than hot right now. Who's going to be able to keep it up in this one? That's the main question. I think even if Seattle wins and Detroit is eliminated, a lot of people have said Dan Campbell is not the kind of guy to let his foot off the gas, even if they're eliminated. They're still going to want to come out and throw haymakers for 60 minutes. So I think Detroit will be playing tough throughout in this one. And I agree that they can cover, and I think they have a chance to pull out a win in this one too. I don't trust Rodgers or that offense at all right now in Green Bay.
I think we all really hope the Lions win because, like the Jags, I think the Lions are the darling of the NFL right now. Every NFL fan has to like the Lions. And if you too are a Lions fan, go check our guy out, Jack Kavanaugh, and his Lions podcast, Believe Lions. You're going to definitely want to see that. Jack is killing it. The Lions are killing it. And it's so fun to watch their shows when the Lions win. And I can't wait to see it. So that does it for us, though, V. That is the last regular season slate of 2022. And we will actually be back the same time next week to break down the playoff preview. And we will be back every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, to break down every single round of the playoffs leading up to our big Super Bowl show. You're not going to want to miss it. The Super Bowl shows are always the most fun.
Yep.
I can't, I'm trying to think if I hit the Gatorade color last year. I know that prior, I'll have to double check, but I know that prior I was on like a streak of like 4 Gatorade colors in a row. It was something insane. Nice. But so that's my favorite part of the playoffs here. And unfortunately, we aren't going to be doing over underdogs. Last night's show was the last over underdogs of the season. So if you missed it, go check it out over at our YouTube, at our Twitch page, and on our Facebook. It's a good watch. We got some winners in there. In order to get access to everything that we write for the playoffs, we are going to be writing stuff all the way up to the playoffs. I'm going to be taking over some player props. We're going to have a lot of input from the guys on what games they're liking. So you're not going to want to miss it. You go over to Important Nonsense to get access to that. And you go into our Patreon to get access to our Discord where you can yell at us in there, get all of our opinions on your picks, and just pick our brain about what we're thinking about the games. And I can't wait for the playoffs, V. It is going to be a doozy. And that about does it for us. Do you have any parting words for the people at home?
Thank you to everyone for joining us every Friday this season. It was a long season, but it was a ton of fun. But like you said, now we get into the actual good stuff. This playoffs should be amazing. There's so many good young quarterbacks who are going to be playing over the next few weeks, and I just can't wait to watch and see who comes out on top.
The changing of the guard in the NFL is in full motion. Crunch time is here. Legends will be made in the next couple weeks, V, and I can't wait to watch it with you and everybody at home. It's going to be a good ride. And yeah, I just can't wait. And until next time, everybody, good luck and Godspeed.